I never thought I'd find myself in the party supplies aisle of Target having a showdown with my mother-in-law, but here we were. The shopping cart in front of me was filled with decorations for my son Lucas's 7th birthday party, superhero-themed plates, balloons, banner kits, and party favors for his classmates. Olivia, this is absolutely ridiculous. Margaret's voice carried through the store, making other shoppers turn their heads. $500 for a child's birthday party? He won't even remember it in a month. I took a deep breath, silently counting to 5 like my therapist had taught me. After 4 years of marriage to her son David, I'd learned that engaging with Margaret's criticism only made things worse. But today, something in me snapped. Lucas will remember it, I said quietly, placing another pack of decorations in the cart. Just like I remember every birthday, my parents managed to make special for me, even when money was tight. Margaret's perfectly manicured hand gripped the cart, her diamond rings catching the fluorescent store lighting. You're just a middle school teacher, dear. You need to be more practical with money. What would people think? By people, she meant her country club friends, the ones who judge everything from my Target wardrobe to our modest 3-bedroom house in the suburbs. The same people who never fail to remind me that David had married down. When he chose a teacher instead of the corporate lawyer his parents had tried to set him up with. I don't care what people think, I replied, straightening my shoulders. This party is for Lucas, not for your friend's entertainment. Well, I care. Margaret's voice rose again. You're part of our family now, even if you don't act like it. Everything you do reflects on us. David works so hard at his father's firm, and you're just throwing money around like. Like what? I interrupted, surprising both of us. Like someone who loves their child and wants to celebrate him. A young mom pushing a stroller quickly steered away from our aisle, probably sensing the tension. Margaret leaned closer, lowering her voice to that condescending whisper I'd grown to hate. Sweetheart, I know you mean well, but this isn't how we do things. When David was growing up, we had elegant, tasteful celebrations. Not this. She gestured at my cart with distaste. Carnival atmosphere you're planning. And we certainly didn't waste money on party favors for every child in the class. I thought about Lucas's face that morning, bouncing with excitement as he helped me make a guest list. He'd insisted on inviting everyone, not wanting any of his classmates to feel left out, just like I'd taught him. Times have changed, Margaret, I said firmly. And this is how David and I choose to celebrate our son's birthday. Oh please, she scoffed. David agreed to this. My son knows the value of money better than that. I raised him right. The implication that I hadn't been raised right hung in the air between us. I thought about my own parents, Dad working double shifts at the factory, Mom taking on extra seamstress work, both somehow always managing to make birthdays magical despite their tight budget. Yes, David agreed, I answered, pulling out my phone to show her the text conversation with my husband. In fact, it was his idea to rent the bounce house. Margaret's face reddened as she read the messages, especially the part where David enthusiastically supported my party plans. Well, I'm calling him right now. This is getting out of hand. $500. On a child's party. When you could be saving that money or investing it or what? I asked quietly, donating it to your country club's annual charity gala, the one where you spend thousands on new dresses and bid on art you don't even like. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly for a moment. In 4 years, I'd never spoken to her this way. I'd always smiled and nodded, swallowed her criticism with a polite thank you for your input. But something had changed in me recently. Maybe it was watching Lucas grow into such a kind, empathetic child despite his grandmother's attempts to mold him into a mini version of the society children she adored. Or maybe it was simply that I'd had enough. How dare you? She finally sputtered. After everything Richard and I have done for you and David. Everything you've done. I couldn't help but laugh. You mean like telling everyone at last year's Christmas party that it's so brave of David to support a teacher's salary? Or suggesting at every family dinner that I should quit my job because it's embarrassing to have a working mother in the family? I was trying to help. Margaret protested, but her voice had lost some of its authority. You could do so much better than teaching, dear. Richard has connections. We could get you a proper career. I have a proper career. I cut her off. I'm a teacher because I love teaching. I make a difference in children's lives every day. And you know what else? I pulled out my credit card, the one that was just in my name. I can afford this party because I'm good with money, Because I save, budget, and plan. Margaret's eyes narrowed at the card. On a teacher's salary, please, David must be giving you an allowance. I smiled then, thinking about the trust fund I'd been quietly building for Lucas since the day he was born. The one funded entirely from my careful investments and savings, including every dollar I'd put aside from teaching summer school and tutoring. The one that now held $75,000, and that neither Margaret nor her country club friends knew anything about. You'd be surprised what people can accomplish when they understand the real value of money, Margaret, I said, pushing my cart toward the checkout. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a birthday party to plan. As I walked away, I heard her furiously dialing her phone, no doubt calling David to complain. But for the first time, I wasn't worried about the fallout. My husband knew about the trust fund. He'd been amazed and proud when I showed him the statements last month. And more importantly, he understood why I wanted Lucas to have both the birthday party of his dreams and a secure financial future. Let Margaret think what she wanted. In a week, when Lucas's party was a huge success and the trust fund's existence finally came to light at the family dinner, she'd learned there was more to her daughter-in-law than met the eye. Much more. The week leading up to Lucas's birthday party was a hurricane of preparation and predictably drama. Margaret had indeed called David after our confrontation at Target, but her complaints fell on deaf ears. Mom, I've told you before, Olivia and I make decisions about Lucas together. I overheard David saying in his home office that evening. His voice was firm, the same tone he used in courtroom negotiations. No, you don't get a vote on this, because we're his parents, not you. He emerged from his office looking exhausted, loosening his tie. I'm sorry about her, he said, pulling me into a hug. She's been calling nonstop since this afternoon. I leaned into his embrace, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne. She thinks I'm wasting your money on this party. David laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Shows how little she knows. You're the one who taught me how to properly budget. He pulled back to look at me, his brown eyes serious. Should we tell her about the trust fund? That might shut her up. Not yet. I smiled, thinking of the upcoming family dinner where we'd planned to announce it. Let her stew for a few more days. The next morning, Margaret launched her next attack. She showed up unannounced at my classroom during lunch break, wearing what she probably thought was casual attire, designer jeans, and a silk blouse that cost more than my monthly car payment. Olivia, dear, she breezed in, ignoring the curious looks from my students who were staying in for lunch help. We need to talk about this party situation. I looked up from helping Jessica with her math problems. Margaret, I'm working. We can discuss this later. This won't take long, she insisted, perching herself on the edge of my desk like she was about to deliver a royal decree. I've taken the liberty of calling the country club. They can host a proper birthday celebration for Lucas this Saturday instead of that bounce house thing you're planning. The students, pretending not to listen, suddenly became very interested in their notebooks. I took a deep breath. The party plans are final, Margaret. Lucas is excited about having his friends over for superhero games and pizza. He doesn't want a country club party. But think of the networking opportunities, she pressed. Richard's golf partner's grandson is about Lucas's age. They could become friends. It's never too early to start building the right connections. I thought about Lucas, who just last week had shared his lunch with a new student who couldn't afford to buy one. My son, who cared more about kindness than the right connections. The party is happening as planned, I said firmly, standing up. Now, I need to help my students. You can see yourself out. She left in a huff, but not before announcing loudly, I just hope you know what you're doing with all this money you're throwing around. Jessica, my brightest math student, looked up after Margaret left. Mrs. Davis, your mother-in-law is kind of scary. I couldn't help but laugh. She's complicated. Now, let's get back to those fractions. That evening, as David and I were setting up Lucas's new gaming system, an early birthday gift from us, my phone buzzed with texts from Margaret's friends. Somehow, she'd mobilized her entire country club circle to talk sense into me. Heard about the party situation, dear. Remember, appearances matter. Margaret's just looking out for Lucas's future. Think about it. The country club really is a better venue, more appropriate for the family's status. I showed the messages to David, who rolled his eyes. Mom's really pulling out all the stops on this one. Want me to say something? I shook my head, watching Lucas sprawled on the floor, thoroughly engrossed in his new game. Let her think she's winning. Saturday will be perfect exactly as it is. The day before the party, Margaret made her final play. She appeared at our door with Richard, her husband, in tow. Unlike his wife, my father-in-law usually stayed out of family drama, preferring to focus on his law firm and golf game. Olivia, Richard began, clearly uncomfortable with his assigned role. Margaret tells me you're being unreasonable about Lucas's party. I invited them in, noting how they both winced at our modest living room decor. Would either of you like some tea? I just made a fresh pot. This isn't a social call, Margaret cut in. Richard, tell her what you told me about fiscal responsibility. But before Richard could launch into what was surely a prepared speech, Lucas came bounding down the stairs. Grandma, Grandpa. Want to see my party decorations? Mom let me help pick everything out. His enthusiasm was contagious, and even Richard's stern expression softened as Lucas dragged them up to see his room, where we'd hung some of the superhero decorations early. I followed, watching as my son proudly showed off the Batman signal we projected onto his ceiling. And tomorrow, all my friends are coming. Even Tommy, who just moved here and doesn't know anybody yet. Mom said we should make sure he feels extra welcome because being new is hard. I saw something flicker across Richard's face. Recognition, maybe, or memory. Later, as they were leaving, he held back while Margaret went to the car. You know, he said quietly, my family couldn't afford big parties when I was growing up. But my mother, she always found a way to make birthdays special. He paused, looking somewhat sheepish. The party sounds wonderful, Olivia. Lucas is lucky to have you as his mother. I touched his arm gently. Thank you, Richard. That means a lot. As I watched them drive away, I smiled to myself. Tomorrow would bring not just Lucas's party, but the family dinner afterward where we'd reveal the trust fund. Margaret had no idea that her campaign against a $500 birthday party was about to backfire spectacularly. Lucas's birthday party was everything a 7-year-old could dream of. Our backyard transformed into a superhero haven, with the bounce house as the centerpiece and carefully planned activity stations scattered around. 20 excited kids in capes and masks ran around, their laughter drowning out even the upbeat superhero music playlist we'd created. Margaret showed up uninvited, of course. She stood at the edge of our yard in her designer sundress, watching with barely concealed horror as children devoured pizza and cake with messy enthusiasm. But even she couldn't deny the joy radiating from Lucas's face. Mom made all this happen. I overheard Lucas telling his friends as they waited for their turn on the bounce house. She's like a superhero too. She teaches kids and makes the best parties. The party wound down by late afternoon, with tired but happy children clutching their goodie bags as parents picked them up. Tommy, the new student, hung back as his mother arrived. Mrs. Davis, he said shyly. This was the best party ever. Thanks for inviting me. I knelt down to his level. We're so glad you came, Tommy. I hope you made some new friends today. He nodded enthusiastically, showing me the phone numbers he collected from other kids. As they left, I caught Margaret watching the exchange, an unreadable expression on her face. The real showdown came at the family dinner that evening. We planned this carefully. David and I had invited both sets of grandparents to a small celebration at our favorite restaurant. My parents, hardworking and humble as always, arrived first. Dad in his freshly pressed shirt, Mom wearing the simple pearl necklace I'd given her last Christmas. The party was wonderful, sweetheart, Mom whispered as she hugged me. Lucas will remember this forever. Margaret and Richard arrived precisely on time, Margaret still looking slightly shell-shocked from the afternoon's festivities. Lucas, tired but happy, was already showing his grandparents the photos from the party on David's phone. Look at everyone having fun, he exclaimed. And nobody felt left out, just like Mom said was important. We made it through appetizers before Margaret couldn't contain herself anymore. Well, I hope you're satisfied, Olivia. All that money spent on one afternoon of chaos. David squeezed my hand under the table, our signal. It was time. Actually, Margaret, I said, reaching into my purse. I wanted to talk about money. I pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. Since you're so concerned about our financial decisions, I thought you might be interested in this. Margaret opened the envelope, her perfectly plucked eyebrows rising higher with each line she read. The trust fund statement showed everything. The initial investment from my first year of teaching, the careful monthly contributions, the smart investment choices that had helped it grow. $75,000? She choked out. But you're a teacher. A teacher who understands the value of planning for the future, David said proudly. Olivia started this trust fund for Lucas the day he was born, using her own salary and savings. Richard picked up the statement, adjusting his reading glasses. These investment choices are impressive. Very impressive. My daughter's always been good with money, my dad spoke up, his quiet voice carrying unexpected weight. She worked through college, saved every extra dollar. Never asked us for help, even though we'd have given it. Margaret was still staring at the statement. But all those times I suggested you needed financial advice, when I offered to have Richard's wealth manager look at your accounts. I appreciated the offers, I said kindly, but I had things under control. You see, Margaret, being good with money isn't about how much you make, it's about how wisely you use what you have. Like making sure there's enough for both a special birthday party and a solid future, David added, putting his arm around me. Lucas, who had been quietly playing his handheld game, looked up. Is this about my college fund, Mom? The one you tell me about when we talk about saving my allowance? Yes, sweetie, I smiled. Remember what we always say about money. It's not about having the most, he recited. It's about using it to help people and make good memories. I saw tears in my mother's eyes as she reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Even Richard looked moved, but it was Margaret's reaction that surprised me most. She carefully refolded the statement, handed it back to me, and was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, softer, almost humbled. I was wrong about you, Olivia, she said quietly. All this time I thought, well, it doesn't matter what I thought. You're providing Lucas with something far more valuable than country club connections. You're teaching him real values. That's all I've ever wanted to do, I replied. Later that night, after Lucas was asleep and David and I were getting ready for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. The party was wonderful. Lucas's joy was worth every penny. I'm sorry for doubting you. Lunch next week, my treat, and maybe you could give me some investment advice. I showed the message to David, who wrapped me in a hug. You know what this means, right? He grinned. You finally cracked the great Margaret Davis. Maybe, I laughed, or maybe she's just realized that some investments, like a child's happiness, pay dividends that can't be measured in dollars. Looking in on Lucas, surrounded by his new superhero decorations and clutching the cape he'd refused to take off, I knew I'd made all the right choices. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about proving your worth in ways that matter most.